Got it. That makes sense. And I think you uncovered the question behind the question, as an old mentor of mine used to talk about. So some people watching this may already be in a professional sales career. And I like to use that term professional sales because I think that there are, and again, maybe it's some of these, cliche examples that we think of, like I mentioned earlier with, the coffee for closers or whatever, where maybe it's not professional sales. So we'll use the term professional sales. There may be some people out there that are already in professional sales careers, or some people who are thinking about, hey, now could be a time to go into professional sales. And I want to start, gearing this conversation around, well, how does the person in either of those boats, how does one determine if professional sales is right for them, knowing that there can be, the farmer versus the hunter, inside versus the outside, business development versus, more transactional one-on-one, enterprise type sales versus, individual product, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what are some of the things from your experiences, my sales gurus and my sales whisperers here? What are some of the things that you talked about? It's about you. So what types of questions do you need to ask yourself to determine if you think, if a professional sales career might be right for you? Rob, kick us off.
Well, Paige uses a fantastic tool called StrengthsFinder. There's another one called the Predictive Index that I think also has are great tools that you can use to help self-evaluate. It's a good place to start. Also think back and try to pull on those threads during your career on the jobs you enjoyed the most, or perhaps not even jobs. What are the activities you enjoyed the most? In high school, I worked in retail and loved every second of it, right? I was, you're a teenager, you're hanging out at the mall, I'm getting paid to sit around and shoot the breeze with people. Neither one of you should be surprised that I was in my element. So if I sort of can trace that line, Steve Jobs said you can't connect the dots looking forward, only in retrospect. But if I look back on that, I can see those dots connecting all along the way to ultimately land me where I did. So look at those things that you enjoy, use some tools, and Paige, I'd love for you to dive in and speak more intelligently about StrengthsFinder, because it is amazing to me when you take one of those exams or answer those questions back, how at times painfully accurate they can be at illustrating not just the things that you're naturally good at, but where are the areas in which you struggle, and that'll help identify, like we mentioned earlier, I would be a terrible capital equipment manufacturer sales rep.
I disagree with that, but I know I'm allowed to, and you're allowed to disagree with me.
No, beat me up. But those would be a couple good places to start to answer your question, I think, as directly as I can.
Yeah, I would add, and I like that you use the term professional, because our career choice here, not only is it not for everybody, it takes skill. It takes skill, it takes constant training. You have to care about what you're doing to do it well. But I would add to what Rob said, sometimes moving from selling to professional selling is just knowing more about it. And most people don't. So like in our industry here, and this is going to get a little dicey for a second, we have a large community of clinical professionals who look at sales after their clinical career and say, I can do this. And not all of them can. So how do you determine which ones? Well, okay, so do you know there's multiple types of selling? Because we all have one picture in our heads when we first heard sales somewhere. And so I think doing the legwork of finding out what all it really takes is the mark of a professional. And so if you're going to start taking this seriously, if you think sales is a good career option, or even if you don't, learning what your choices are and where the skill comes in, that's going to really help you evaluate if it's a career for you. It's the same discussion that we're having this morning, but there is more to know, and it is a professional career choice, not a secondary, I can do great because I like people. Oh, wonderful. There's more to it.
So I'm going to make an aside here, and we can edit this one out. But Rob, in high school, I also worked retail. I worked at a clothing store, an independent clothing store. It wasn't at the mall. It was a strip mall, but it wasn't at the mall. Independent clothing store. And what I liked most about that job was when I would work evenings, was doing the store's closing announcement. That was my favorite part of that job, was getting on the little PA on the phone and making up a new twist on the script that we were supposed to say about the store is closing, and So anyway, that was my favorite part about working retail. But like I said, I digress.
Why do you think that was your favorite part? I'm curious.
Yeah,
now we got to tug on that thread a little bit. I want to know more about why that lit your fire.
Maybe that's an interesting question, and probably some unsatisfied need for attention, and maybe that's why I'm doing these interviews. But it was also actually a very, very, very good question, but it was also a way to be satisfying that unmet need for attention, but in a way Wizard of Oz behind the curtain, because I was just at a station somewhere announcing something. No one necessarily saw me, or obviously the few people that were around realized, oh, that's the dude that's doing the announcement, and will he get on with it? Because I would start early and invent whole little things. It wasn't just reading from the deal. So maybe that was it, Rob. Maybe that was the thing, was this need to perform, or this need for exercising some creativity as well. So that was my favorite part about working in retail.
Yeah, I think that tugging on that thread of creative messaging and being able to operate behind the scenes in doing so. That's really cool. Thanks for sharing that.
Oh yeah, no worries, because it was really, and wow, now I'm really thinking about it. It was an exercise in taking something that was, quite frankly, mundane. Thank you for shopping. We'll be closing in 5 minutes. Take your stuff, get out, whatever. We had a script, right? But taking something that was relatively mundane and making it a little bit of my own, and crafting, the message, a way to say that message that still got the point across.
Yeah.
Anyway. So Rob, earlier you mentioned about an assessment, or taking these assessments. And I don't think that's something that people in general do enough of. So I just wanted to know, maybe Paige, if you could comment a little bit on how do people find these types of assessments, and are there a couple that you might recommend before we kind of move into another area of the conversation?
Well, yeah. There are a lot of companies that use different assessments as, one leg of the hiring stool for them to help understand people coming in, but you can use it for any kind of a job. I like a couple of specific ones that tend to lend themselves a little more directly to people kind of figuring out where they naturally lean and can be successful. And Rob mentioned the one I've used for a long time is the Clifton Strengths Finder. I just find that assessment kind of speaks to me. And the idea being that if you are using your strengths, you are leaning most naturally into the areas where success is going to come without stress and effort. The whole idea is to live into who you are. So the Strengths Finder, I like it for a lot of reasons. One, it won't break the bank when you buy it. It's $20. And just about anybody can figure out who they are on $20. And that's a cool thing. I also like assessments that tell the person taking them as much as the person who is hearing about, I don't know if that came out right, but usually when you take an assessment, you need somebody to interpret it for you to understand what you're doing. I like Clifton for its simplicity there, but there are a lot of assessments that are scary right on. and do need some interpretation to learn about yourself in that capacity. But
okay, great.
I think you just ask somebody who is in that career, because assessments is a whole deal all by itself.
So you talked earlier, or asked the question earlier about, was asking if you're in sales currently or thinking about getting into sales. Some of the, how do you determine that? I want to ask that question a little bit different way. And, Paige, I think you mentioned earlier, and of course you come across it quite a bit in your career as a recruiter. But you mentioned people who maybe have transitioned out of a clinical career in dentistry, and they think, okay, I can go be a salesperson. I've used the products, I can go sell them, right? Mm-hmm. And I guess the question I want to ask is, as you're doing, maybe just some introspection before you take one of these assessments, let's say, are there red flags where maybe, you can kind of figure out pretty quickly this isn't right for you? We've talked, I've tried to get at, well, what are some of the, what are some of the attributes? And we'll talk more about that in a minute. But are there red flags where if you're talking to someone, or if someone is, trying to do some introspection, that they should really pay attention to, that maybe this, professional sales isn't the right avenue?
Am I supposed to answer that? Or just leaning on Rob to jump in there? But
whoever wants to jump in.
In that particular conversation, it get dicey, because most of the people coming out of the clinical do exactly what you just said. They think, I've used these, I know this product, it's about educating people, I can do that. And they have a very real selling experience of treatment and case acceptance with patients. That is a sale. But you have to remember that selling has all of those different components to it. So I look at a situation like that and I see strength in the case acceptance piece, and I think that person may very well be this type of seller, the one that's either behind the phone or in front of the screen. And there are very applicable transferring of skills, but that person, when the patient is in their chair and in front of them, they have not gone out and found them. They've not gone out and knocked on a door. They're not competing with other people right next to them. They're competing with different things, but it's not a one-to-one comparison. So that's why I come back to that educational piece. And not to hammer the book I wrote, but it is for people trying to determine where their professional selling career might apply in our industry. So I'm just going to say it's back to knowing what your choices really are.
Yeah. So let's just go ahead and plug it, Paige. What's the name of the book and where can we get it?
Thanks. It's called The Chocolate Room, Exploring the Dental Industry for Your Professional Sales Career. You can get it in Amazon and you can get it on my website.
And your website is?
Oh, I'm sorry. PaigeMeadRecruiting.com.
There
you think I'd be better at selling myself.
Well,
but yeah, better at selling other things, I guess.
It's a fantastic, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Rob.
I was just going to say it's a fantastic read. And I do think if we're isolating our little universe of dentistry and for those folks that are interested in getting into dental sales specifically, Paige does a really nice job of outlining a few of the different options within our universe. We've touched on them a little bit, right? There's the capital equipment, direct sales rep. There's capital equipment that sells through distribution. There's the material side, the manufacturers reps who work for the big three or other manufacturers that make composites and impression materials and run on down the line. Then there's the distribution side of the business, which is where I have been lucky enough to land in my career. And those folks carry the entire bag and represent the folks that manufacture and then and make the goop that then they sell to us and we support the practices with. And even within our little microcosm in the dental distribution, we have technology specialists, we have equipment specialists. We have our team, we call them private practice specialists, right? The folks that are in the dental practice day in and day out, kind of at the beck and call of the team as a support resource on anything and everything that they might need. So I think Paige struck a really important chord there, which is do some homework in figuring out what options are available and try as best you can to deeply understand those, because in many cases, this is not universally true, but some of those folks that come out of a clinical setting, whether they're hygienists, assistants, or dentists who no longer want to practice or can practice, they can be exceptional manufacturer reps working for the companies that make this stuff, because those guys and gals need to be the experts on a much smaller portfolio of products. So I think they can really excel in that capacity. The danger comes when, and I've had these conversations countless times in my career, you talk with someone who's in a clinical setting and they see sales reps coming and going, and often, dressed nicely, driving nice cars, and think, that looks awesome. Well, it is awesome if it's a good fit. And while, yes, they have lots of experience in selling treatment to patients, they've not been the ones to go hunt down those opportunities, right? You have to, as a sales professional, not just be willing to overcome no, but get to love no and learn how to celebrate these little micro wins, right? Small progress toward a much bigger goal. So,
yeah, absolutely.
So you're